you should probably expect spoilers.
She might be able to outrun an entire police department, but she won't be able to outrun this review. Who dat? It's Faith. Do you remember when parkour suddenly became an international craze and had everybody face-planting themselves into mild concussions? Yeah, judging by Fail Army, people are still doing it. As expected, video games were going to try and take on board this radical new thing, so we had assassins from ancient times running up the bloody walls, and although somewhat late to the party, it seems a certain blue hedgehog even tried to do that shit too. Somewhere in the middle of the two 00s came a game called Mirror's Edge that let you parkour your way through the levels strictly from a first person's perspective, and while the viewpoint as well as the controls needed some getting used to, the title ended up earning itself a huge cult following, and rightfully so. There really isn't any other game quite like Mirror's Edge that focuses so exclusively to the art of parkour. Presented in a brilliantly textured world full of rich, vibrant colours, grabbed people's attentions and instantly left lasting impressions on us for years to come. I still personally consider the world in Mirror's Edge to contain one of my favourite uses of colour in video games. With such a unique playstyle presented for a truly breathtaking game world, for me the only other things this title needed was intriguing characters and an engaging storyline. Let's find out if it delivered on those. Faith is our main character and comes from a place called the City. Well, that's it, it's just called the City. Nothing else. Right, okay. The city used to be a place of freedom, and even though that freedom was abused and brought about danger, it was still considered a somewhat wonderful town. Over time, changes began occurring to the city from those in charge. Big drastic changes. A law movement called the Citizenship Program was instilled to stamp out things that these leaders deemed to be a hindrance to the city. Those who wanted to continue living an alternative lifestyle to what the leaders enforced were faced with heavy opposition and sometimes arrested. In short, although the city looks wonderful, it is technically under a form of dictatorship. With the city being as oppressed as it is, some people resort to using runners as a means for transporting things between places. These runners slip underneath the radar of the government, and therefore it's considered a suitable method of passing information around the city without the officials noticing. At one point, a movement arose within the public to stand up to the citizenship program. Rallies and protests grew larger and more intense with each demonstration until an event occurred called the November Riots, which were a series of riots that happened in November, I think. Faith and her sister Kate were present during these riots as their parents were avid protesters. During one of the peaceful protests, shit kicked off into a riot and their mother was killed. The father became depressed and turned to alcoholism, and Faith was like, nah, fuck this, I'm out, so she left. Taken to the streets and resorting to thievery for survival, Faith crossed paths with a runner named Merc, who took her in. With Merc being a runner, he slowly trained Faith to become a runner too, and later on down the line when she came of age, she began working for him directly out in the field. Faith is a fully fledged runner by the time the game begins. The city is currently under mayoral elections and the new candidate Robert Pope is up against the current man in charge, Mayor Callahan. Through a series of events, Pope is killed in his office and the only person at the scene of the crime is Faith's sister Kate, who works for the city's police department. Clearly being a setup, things don't look so good for Kate and Faith has to help her sister out. What ensues is a major dog, cat and mouse chase around the city as Faith is hunting down the real person responsible for the assassination while she herself is being hunted down by law enforcers for her connections to Kate. If that wasn't bad enough, it turns out a task force had been created specifically to take down the runners. Merc gets killed in all the bullshit and Faith's friend Celeste shanked everyone in the back as she was the one responsible for Pope's murder. It wouldn't be a crime story if someone's best friend didn't turn on them and reveal themselves to be the bad guy, innit? What were you expecting? Anyways, Faith saves Kate in what felt like a somewhat rushed climatic conclusion, and boom, that's Mirror's Edge. It's a story we've seen a lot of before, a harsh ruling body that tramples on the little guy, and so the little guy rises up to take down Goliath. It's also the crime story cliche of someone was killed, someone was set up, now they've got a name to clear. These things have no doubt been done before. A cliched storyline shouldn't matter though if the characters keep us invested. A great and well written character can make even the most cliched of storylines engaging. So, how does Faith hold it down? Well, let's see.
Visual design.
As far as looks go, Faith is able to keep the details in her appearance to a minimum and yet achieve a fair amount of individuality with it all. Firstly, while the bob cut hairstyle is nothing too out of the ordinary, it is paired up with a tattoo that is quite distinct to Faith. Story-wise, she was given a tattoo after her first successful errand as a runner, so it's there for a reason and not slapped on her face to make her appear alternative just for the hell of it. Faith keeps the top half of her outfit simplistic by donning a plain black tank top and a matching black sports band on her right elbow. Then she's got a ghetto fabulous Michael Jackson thing going on as she's busting one singular red glove on her right hand. It's a fingerless glove too, by the way. Hello from the 1980s. We like this kind of shit. Her trousers also keep things simple for her design. No logos, no crazy elaborate patterns, just plain white pants with a fair amount of pockets to hold items in. It's worth noting that the ends of her trousers are strapped tightly to her lower legs to keep them from flapping about while she's jumping from rooftop to rooftop. Lastly, there's her shoes, which are, yeah, you know these ones. I'm not a personal fan of them. I don't know, the look always seems unbalanced and awkward to me, like it's a manufacturing error or something. Though I oddly don't have any problems with sandals or traditional tabi footwear, which are Japanese socks that feature a split between the toes. It's just when this concept is transferred to running shoes, it comes across as a little disorientating to me. It's actually interesting that I should mention the tabi footwear though, as that's something I want to touch upon quickly within Faith's design. Runners are known for jumping and leaping over obstacles that would halt a regular person's tracks. Runners find pathways through places where other people would see a hindrance. In some ways, the methods in which a runner travels from point A to point B is similar to that of a Japanese ninja. The ninja's footwear is sometimes seen to be an outdoor version of the tabi, and more often than not, you will also see the ends of the pants strapped down to the ninja's legs too, which is exactly what Faith is doing with her garments. I'm not saying Faith herself is a ninja, not at all, but it wouldn't be amiss to liken a runner and some of their basic skills to that of a ninja. Okay, a ninja specializes in espionage and assassination, while a runner is a courier. However, both types of agents move through environments in similar means, and particularly in Faith's case, she's mimicking the type of lower half clothing that a ninja wears. There's clearly been some influence here. So, while I'm personally not keen on this type of running shoe, I definitely appreciate why they might be that way and what it's possibly referencing. All in all, the design is relaxed on what it throws at you and it keeps the colours very neutral with only a few slight accents of red to bring out a little bit of spice to the whole appearance. Overall, it's a good look for Faith and I'm feeling it.
Personality.
And here we are. This is the aspect that I personally feel Faith has drawbacks with. Whether it was down to bad writing for the character or just the way in which the personality was executed, I don't know, but for me, I came away from Mirror's Edge realizing that I hadn't really felt absorbed or interested in her as a person. Faith always felt too stern and abrupt in the way she spoke, even to the characters that she shared very close bonds with. I get it, it's a personality type designed to complement the coolness of her actions, a human who does extraordinary things and lives on the mirror's edge. She was designed to be a strong badass, but it always felt too slanted to one angle, so much so that she even came across as a bit of an arsehole at times when it really wasn't needed. I think one of the key moments that left a bad taste in my mouth was very early on when Faith meets Kate in Pope's office and sees his dead body.
You don't recognize him? Should I? It's Robert. Robert Pope, friend of Dad's?
Shit, that Pope.
He called me. We hadn't talked much since I joined up. He had a break-in last week. He's still a campaigner. Don't you read the news?
It's not news anymore. It's advertising.
Ooh, check this one out. We've got a rude girl up in here now. Like, seriously, her sister has just been placed at the scene of a very serious crime and is more than likely looking at being set up for the fall, and Faith shows only moderate concern for the situation, but still have enough balls to remind her sister that Big Brother runs the city and they're watching. You know, there's a time and a place for those kinds of things. It really did not seem like the most appropriate point for her to get all preachy towards her sister, who's more than likely shitting bricks right about now. But you know what, it didn't even stop there.
Help me, Effie, please. You've got contacts? There's gotta be more to this. Something he knew. Something he wanted to tell me.
I can't get involved in this, Kate. You know what I do.
Great.
So Faith's initial knee-jerk response is to decline her sister's request. You know, a request that might mean life or death for the poor girl. Faith's first words to come out of her mouth in reply to that are, "Sorry, you know I'm the anti-hero. I can't help you, fam." Are you serious? Okay, if I'm going to be fair about it, Faith does end up taking Kate's request and says she will do what she can and even gives her sister a quick hug as well. But for me, by that point, it kind of felt a little too late for that. In the space of 2 minutes, Faith didn't make me feel like she was a person that others could rely on, and in truth she came across as being a tad selfish too. We play as this character with no options with interactions, therefore we are forced to take the emotions that she presents to us. We are told, this is what you said, and this is how you feel about it. And if that's the case, I don't want to be someone whose first thought is to push agendas around the office and then look after one's own ass. Even after she's quit the badass routine and does decide to help her sister, I'm like, couldn't you have been like that from the get-go? Was the tough around the edges approach really needed? Because I didn't really like it. Faith goes on to risk her life to save her sister, so I'm not saying she's a character who's on this journey reluctantly. She's definitely here because she wants to be, but these slight dashes of selfishness got me wondering why she had to be like that. For the sake of the character, I'm hoping the reasons are due to her troubled home life, with her father being quite neglectful towards the rest of the family, Faith's mother being killed in the riots, and Faith herself eventually running away to live life on her own. At least this way, Faith is not just acting so cold for the sake of being a badass, but events from her past caused her to turn out like this. If it's part of the story, then honestly, fair play. But if that really is the case, we are not given enough time within the game to come to grips with these life-changing moments from her childhood. It was all dumped on our lap during a brief chat she had with Celeste around the latter half of the story. It's never shown to be something that's on Faith's mind. It's never mentioned before or after this scene. It just appears out of nowhere to tell us, oh, by the way, this also happened to the character, and then that's it. How are we supposed to empathize with that? Personally for me, I couldn't. I know they released a series of comic books that covers Faith's backstory, but I didn't read those when I played the game initially, and when your in-game universe is banking on you to have checked out that other material, if you haven't, then you're left with a half-explained character. That ain't cool. Ideally, I would have liked to have seen Faith show some deeper variations in those emotions, and through that perhaps I could have connected to her more. As it stands, I just find her attitude to be a tad closed off and difficult to gel with.
Importance.
Through her family, Faith is directly connected to Robert Pope himself. He had been a protester alongside Faith's parents, and later on in his life he would try to run for mayor, only to be killed because of it. Kate would be framed, and it would be up to Faith to help her sister clear her name. Faith's initial stupid response to not help Kate would have resulted in Faith being clear of the trouble surrounding her sister, but not of the task force that had been secretly put together to hunt down the runners. Eventually, at some point, Celeste was going to stab Faith in the back anyway, so one way or another, Faith was going to get dragged into this mess whether she helped her sister or not. However, it's not Faith's connections to her sister that I actually appreciated the most, nor is it her friendship with Celeste before that was cut short. It was to Merc, her mentor, who communicates to Faith through the earpiece. Merc no longer runs, but instead acts as a tracker, a person who owns a team of runners and keeps an eye on them while they're out running. With access to citywide surveillance, a tracker is the eyes to a runner and helps direct them away from danger that the runner might be unaware of. Merc, to me, was probably the most endearing character the game had in it. He constantly keeps in touch with Faith, he gets worried when the police are in hot pursuit of her, and you can hear it in his voice that he wants the girl to get home safely. She's like a daughter to him. After all, he did raise her for a good portion of her life. Her well-being is his top priority. We actually get a few funny lines from him too, and it helps to soften the overly serious vibe that Faith drags around with her. In fact, the thing I looked forward to the most in this game was whenever Merc would check in. It really helped to get a sense of movement to the game's dialogue. Although I've given Faith a hard time because of her personality, we actually get the most emotion out from her character when Merc dies. It's for a brief moment, the scene is honestly no longer than a minute or so, but seeing Faith kneel down next to him as they exchange their final words to each other was the one scene I remember the most from the whole story. I'll admit his death scene did feel very sudden. I honestly didn't see it coming, and I kinda wish it didn't have to pan out that way either. But for what it's worth and for what it gives to Faith emotionally, for that short brief moment I genuinely felt a strong bond between Faith and another character. I don't really recall ever feeling this type of bond between her and her own sister. Merc and Faith just carried a greater chemistry, and as far as importance goes, I personally place Faith as the top priority in Merc's life. Forget all the politicians and backstabbing friends featured in the story. When it comes to Mirror's Edge, the most important character relation I can honestly think of is between Merc and Faith.
Conclusion.
The story Faith is placed in is one that we've seen before. It's a common story setup. Some government somewhere is fucking somebody over. When it comes to that somebody though, that somebody should be the part about this cliched story that draws us in and makes us want to invest our time into them to see how they deal with the problem. With Faith, I just felt the personality lacked any real emotional weight, and sometimes her choice of response either seemed too faulty or even so far as to say phoned in. It's a shame because her visual design is pretty damn cool, and the world she comes from is a stunningly beautiful playground. It just saddens me a little that whenever I think back to Mirror's Edge, I'm thinking more about the world and how beautiful it looked, and not how the main character made me feel. Mirror's Edge was originally meant to have a sequel, but that got cancelled so many times to the point we're now in 2016 and the whole damn thing is just being rebooted, which is a shame because I would have liked to have seen how Faith would have grown as a character. I do welcome the reboot though, I feel it's going to be a fresh start for her, and I want to see how they're going to handle her personality this time round.